my game show host kind of thing. Okay, we are live. We are live. We are. Let me get that right. We are live, and we are joined this hour by Tureeda Mikell, and she is a poet, an author, um, just an incredible just artist of all stripes. I met her in the Bay Area. We're very excited to speak to her this hour. She has a new book coming out. We're gonna get into that later. But Tureeda, why don't you start? Just tell us how did you begin writing poetry?
Um, I began not long after my mother died. That's the earliest time I can remember. And it was around the age of 10, 11, 12, somewhere in that time, between Schenectady Cottage, foster care, in that space. Yeah. That's when I began, and maybe a little before. Yeah, a little. Yeah, it was after my mother, definitely after my mother passed. So 10, 10 and a half, 11, 12. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
And
what?
that the things well, yeah. So the things I wrote about was because I didn't know, why she would be taken from us. I'm a child, oldest of two younger siblings. So I'm looking at uh, birds and animals and nature, and I guess you've taken a lot of things. So you had to take mom. Those kinds of. There was just a lot of questioning about things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what kind of relief or what what did you get out of writing poetry? Like, it seems like it would be a situation where it would just kind of flow out of you. So, how did, yeah, what was, what
It,
were you
it
feeling as you wrote all this?
well, it just allowed me to, after writing it and then reading it, I could have that voice that I was unable to have through others, because there was no one to really speak to in regards to these issues that had come up. I was obese. I had Bell's palsy, where half my face had become paralyzed. I was somewhat aphasic. I would not speak much. I wouldn't say anything. I was there was a lot of childhood trauma after my mother passed, and so there were things that I just didn't speak of, and so I would write them as a mirror of So I would have this person or being speak through me, and that was helpful to me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, can you speak a little more to like what that experience is like for you to have the spirit speak through you, and is that still kind of part of your practice today as a poet and a storyteller,
Yeah,
writer?
and story medicine woman is because it's been medicine, definitely, for me to listen to spirit speak. My first experience was listening or being able to recognize my mother reappear in my bedroom while she's in the hospital, but she's crossing over. So I am able to witness her cross over. And so that was intense. That was, I woke up believing that she had come home and she had actually crossed over. She had died while
Yeah.
in the hospital. But it seemed like she was so real
Yeah.
that morning. So
So
I wrote
when
about that. I write about things on two different planes. And so, I've
when
always
when
been
you,
that way.
when you write about your mother and seeing her pass, um, as those things happen, I mean, I'm kind of almost interrupting my own interview here because I have my own questions, right? When you see her, does she retain her personality, like the things you remember about her? Does she respond to passing the way she was in life?
She was dressed in her favorite suit. Her hair was well done. She had her makeup on. She was dressed. She walked over to me, and I was like still in bed, kind of half between that twilight sleep and just waking up. She bent down, kissed my forehead, and the comfort of that made me go back to sleep. So when I woke up fully, I believed she had come home.
Yeah,
Um, and so I got up asking, "Where is mama?" And my cousin that had been the babysitter pretty much, she was crying. And I said, well, as a kid, she was a teenager. My mother was always talking to her about boys and stuff. So tears they were normal. I didn't put it together that it could have been about my mother.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but my mother looked beautiful that morning, like she was ready.
So when I wouldn't call them visions. I mean it's probably dreams, but they're sometimes very lucid. When I dream about my grandfather, when I used to dream, I mean I've had some, if you like, last year maybe, but I would dream that he was alive again.
Mm.
And when he was alive, I would be like, Grandpa, viejo, you're dead. You died. And he'd be like, ah. And that was kind of the way he was in life. Very much like, he didn't like to be told what to do and when to do it. He was very independent spirit, right? So when I would
Hmm.
see him as like, somebody who had died but was still here, it was like as him though. It wasn't like, like in this, like, it wasn't like, or in this like very dignity, like very like, I am returned, I am the spirit of.
Right,
He
right,
was very much himself. It's like, like, don't tell me that. No, like I was like nagging him or something.
right, right. No, my mother was, she was a gentle soul. She was, my father took care of the garden. She took care of the front yard with the flowers. She knew about the canning of fruits and vegetables that he would grow. And, um, we would go to church with her while my father, who would never go to church, stayed in the garage as the bootleg barber and just cut. All the guys come over, the radio's on. Oh man, you don't know what you're talking about. He said, he shot 47 rounds and so and so. It's like all, the guys. That was his church. All the guys coming over in the garage, and mama taking the girls are going to church. So it was, that kind of thing. And it was, just a simple kind of life up until the age of 10. And then everything changed. As my sister would say, it went from sugar to shit. And so, yeah, things changed. But yeah, but the
And so,
writing, I did some painting. I played classical piano from the time I was 5 on up till I was 21. And I still have a piano. I still, I may listen to jazz and kind of play along with it, improvising, things like that. So art, as my junior high teachers informed me, that I would make a name for myself in the arts. They told me that when I was like 13 years old. And I don't know what I wrote, but my art teacher was just amazed. He was thrilled. He showed it to everybody. I didn't understand what I had said or what I had written that was so amazing to him. But you write things and you turn it in, and there you go. But that was San Francisco back in the day.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you have do you have so many various artistic talents, or you're talented in several disciplines. Does that kind of cross over? I mean, I remember watching the filmmaker David Lynch. He would talk about how like he'd be in a painting or he'd be writing a story and it would again make it way into film, or get an idea of a film and make its way into painting. So do you have this kind of a similar kind of thing where like you have an idea and it may turn into this, it may turn into that, it may turn into a jazz riff? Who knows? I mean,
Oh, yes, yes. Actually, I have quite a few lyrics. I've been trying to get tango. I said, if you want to do some blues, I got some lyrics over here. So, yeah, I've actually performed with John Handy. I've performed with Dimensions Dance Theater. I sang a piece that I wrote, the lyrics called Starry Nights. I did another piece for someone else that dealt with my stint working as a lab tech in a psychiatric institution, where I wrote a piece called Eyes So Bright. That's in the book. But it's about a brother I would see walking around, just looking up at the sky. And, I'd look at him and I said, what is he looking at? But his eyes were so bright. So that was, just so it would be a crossover from singing to writing. And then I do a lot of doodling. I've noticed that, my journals have doodlings in them where after I've written something, there's an image that kind of comes up, but I haven't put those to anything that I think I should put out in public as yet.
yeah. How about can you tell us? You used this phrase earlier, and I'm very interested in it. Story medicine woman. What is meant by story medicine woman? Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah. When I left the nursing field, I went into prevention. A lot of prevention, because I could see things that were going on that I felt needed to be prevented. Um, and then I didn't realize how much anger there was around mentioning those things. I'm very thankful that I had elders and others around me that were in that field, as well as, a few doctors that would understand where I was coming from, as it relates to that form of medicine. Story medicine is healing, and we all are story medicine tellers in some respect. But that came to me long before I saw anything written by anyone. It arrived in my head to say, well, you are a story medicine woman. And there may be things, because when people would say, well, why are you writing so much about the church, or why are you writing so much about spirit? And, I'm trying to let it go, but I have I have images of certain ancestors on my wall, and certain totem animals that speak. So I I draw upon that, or they draw upon me, and there's things that I release that's like a medicine, and that's what people recognize in my work when I read. There's something that's been seen in a slightly different way that will not allow us to be uh, victims of everything.
So in this process, is the medicine come in? I'm going to ask you a question I know the answer to, but I'm going to do it so that you can say it, right? So in the story medicine, is the story in hearing the stories, or is it in releasing the stories, or is it in both?
Both. Hmm.
Can you
Yeah,
tell?
because
Can you
I
tell?
have to listen. I must listen. The listening comes where, when you're listening and then you just say, well, what does that mean? Because you're listening. You're listening. So I say, what? You write that down. So, you know, uh, it happens. You write down what comes. Um, and it's of course, in regards to a theme of some kind. Yeah.
So what can we do? What advice do you have for us to develop what advice do you have to writers? Because oftentimes the advice writers get is how to write, right? But very rarely do we get advice on how to read and how to listen. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and those I think are very very underdeveloped skills
Mm-hmm.
in humanity, really. But also, but for writers in particular, we don't have this. We know that yeah, read other people, yeah, they blah 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 blah. But how do you read? Like not like how do you literally read, but like how do you read? How do you really like immerse yourself in someone else, immerse yourself in the words of others, and really listen, and really be mindful that you're taking in a whole other worldview. Like what are the steps that you do, or what are the how does it come to you when you're really actively listening?
Yeah, well, I've heard you read several times, and so many other, great poets and storytellers. My God, it's journeying. People talk about buying a ticket, going, flying somewhere. You could sit down and listen to poetry, and like that's a journey. And For me, that's a journey, listening to how people process language and where it's taking them, and as it's taking them, or where it has taken them, where it's taking me as a listener, as I'm following their process and listening to where they're going. As a writer, for someone who wishes to write, you go from the place you know best. What do you know? What strikes your passion? What is your passion? Because it's not about trying to sound like somebody else or be like somebody else. It's about who are you, where you are, who are you? What are you about that you feel you need to share in this moment that will help? One of the principles of the Nguzo Saba is Kaumba. You leave something better than what it was when you arrived. So, what can you leave that's a little better, that's going to bring more light to something, even though what you may share can sound dark? Where will it take? Where will it take you? Where will it take others? And so that's what I try to involve people in, that want to write. What are you hoping for? Because it's like, I know people want to see change. They want something better to take place. So if you present sometimes what's wrong, just like some Native or Indians will tell us, Native Americans will say, complaining about a situation isn't whining, or it's revolution. It's making you see what's there. And if you see what's there, will you change it? Will you make it better? Will you turn it around? Um, and so, and then there's writing on things that are beautiful, magical, mystical, um, reverent, holy, sacred. And I tend to write on all of it. Especially synchronistic, the things that tend to happen in such a synchronistic way that you couldn't have planned this happenstance in your environment. You just couldn't have planned it. Just like, bam, what? you mean so and so, and they're from this side of the country, but they live on that part, and then suddenly they're together, and their mom in New York. What? And so things like that take place, you just live in awe of, and it keeps you going, and it brings you hope that this is an amazing place, and somebody's trying to jack it up.
So you mentioned synchronicity, and I want to get into the book, but before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about Nomadic Press?
Oh yes, well, Nomadic Press is a press that was initiated by J.K. Fowler, and it's in Oakland, some part of the Midwest, and in New York, and he tries to gather those voices. Nomadic tries to gather voices that seldom get heard but should be heard. Mm-hmm. And from all the readings I've attended thus far, and I've attended many, lost count, of Nomadic, it's been amazing, the voices and the range of voices, the nationalities, the belief systems, but all intertwining, all connective in some way. Each having our own human journey, but just don't want to hurt anybody. Just let me have my space and enjoy this journey the way I feel I should have it. Yeah. So, yeah. So I've enjoyed Nomadic Press for that. And then they're, the way they go about having an editor go through your work, and the discussion that would take place, going through the work and just revisiting what you said while you had written that work, and substantiating it, making it go deeper, stronger. Yeah. Yeah.
So you and I met at Speaking Achelot, which is hosted by Jose Luis Aldrete, and that's also part of the Nomadic Press series, is it not?
Right. Yes. Josiah is white. Wow. He's the medicine man. He's the other. We talk about, the sharing of the story from the mystical point of view. And then looking at, the way you tell your stories, like, the fire, just everyone has their thing. And it's so engaging to listen, to truly listen.
So in addition to just writing poetry and storytelling and doing all these things, you also create platforms of your own. Can you talk a little bit about what is the Tree of Life Foundation?
The Tree of Life Foundation also gets into prevention, as I said before. So part of Poets in the Schools, because I've published about 70 something children's poetry anthologies. Yeah, poetry anthologies. Getting children to see, getting people to see what language does and how it can influence the mind. And I've definitely have been looking at that over the years, since about 89. I started Tree of Life around 85. And from that point, it was totally about the physical and the prevention of diseases and things that I saw coming or growing. I can really go into a space where I can get quite flustered and angry. That's why I'm holding in things right now, because I've written things about what that's been about, what the medical field has been about for me, what the language has been about, and trying to engage people in what that is. Practicing Qigong, I did not know that I was practicing Qigong and had that come through me until I spoke to a Qigong master through one of my clients, because I see clients through Tree of Life. When people come or, feel they need a session with that, I, like the Qigong master said, this is something you shouldn't charge, because it's a gift. And so, you allow people to give you what they feel they can truly afford and what they think it's worth. And so that's all a part of the Tree of Life, because there's this, we're all part of that tree, and we're here in this life, but there's something that's not being acknowledged for the well-being of that tree. The well-being of our lives are being trampled, abused. We're not supposed to look at certain places where we have been trampled and abused. So I try to uncover those things and speak to them, even though it's kind of difficult, because we've been, those monkeys hear, see, and speak no evil. And yeah, I had an experience where I was writing a poem about that. The hear, see, and speak no evil, speaking of synchronicity. And just when I was finishing up my notes, writing about this, this hear, see, and speak no evil, and the monkeys, bum and summum, I walk into the school library, and there on the screen are the 3 monkeys. And I said, whoa. So it's like the universe saying, yeah, we're on the same page. I got you. So synchronicity. Yeah, Tree of Life covers a wide range of things, and I try to address them. And if you go online and kind of look through it, you can see some things.
Yeah. No, yeah, I was able to find some things. So in the naming practice of this, I mean, naming practice are very important. So why did you name it the Tree of Life?
Oh, because we are our trees. We have dendrites that look like trees. That's the naming of the tree. And so, yeah, we are trees of life and light. We send and receive light. We be the tree.
Can you expand on that? Like, we send and receive light. That's a very beautiful phrase, and I'm practicing what you talk about. I'm listening. I'm like, what does that mean?
Well, that's like one of the poems, that talked about the tree of life. And let's see, because it's a song, but then it's also a poem. And I can recite it if you want. I don't know. What happened to your voice?
I muted myself so that the sort of little weird noises wouldn't wear. But yes, I would love to hear it. I mean, and our audience would love to hear it too. Let's hear it.
Oh, okay. It's said in oh wow. Said in the times of old was this story told of life and trees and teachings of them that be. Said in trials of heaven and earth, some came in the name of birth to captain their ships on earth and test the sameness of their worth. Named organs in us that be divine marks of many trees, said others would live to see this mark made throughout eternity. Now, to prove they weren't wrong, sorcerers and healers sang this song, mended lights from heaven's seeds so we could mirror these living trees. I said they mended lights from heaven's seeds so we could mirror these living trees, created religions, chants, and songs on laws of life and dawnings of the dawns. Emerge lights, heaven seeds, cultural arts through families. Said Nirvana word song is a root we all belong, coming from the word nerve, looking like a tree, sends the laws of life and it sure enough receives. I said it sends the laws of life and it sure enough receives. Said there's mysterious strength and nerves and wisdom's not to be disturbed. Because the nerve is called dendrite, meaning tree-like, and known in the science of biology. I said the nerve is called dendrite, meaning tree-like, and known in the science of biology. Said the story is not wrong. Check the roots of your language songs. Unfolds the mystery of living trees, trees of life in you and me.
Right. That feels good to hear. That is medicine. You speak the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you about, you mentioned this phrase earlier, or this word earlier, and why and its importance to you. This word synchronicity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I know that your book recently came out, and it is called Synchronicity.
Yeah, the Oracle of Sun Medicine. True. Yeah.
Oracle of Sun Medicine. So tell us about your latest release.
Well, yeah, the stories in there are stories of, the poems share, gosh, where can I begin? There's so many places in that book that can share what synchronicity is. The book speaks to an area that, wow, there's like a situation that took place where I'm directed to go to an event where someone tells me that I better be aware of certain hate groups, because she heard about this hate group on the radio. And when she told me, I did want to believe it, and I was younger then. And so, there's that story called It's On. So it talks about the synchronistic occurrence that takes place, blending what had been told and then what the soul unfolds to me to let me know, yes, you should pay attention. And all those years ago, here we are facing what the elder said. And here I am, an elder now, what she said years ago. And so having me pay attention to synchronistic occurrences, or synchronicity, in other words, saying the universe is giving you something to pay attention to, even though you may not want to, or it's hard to believe, but yet it's here. Because during that time I said, well, these things aren't happening anymore, but apparently it's still happening. So, and that's one story. Another story is Preface of Three Women. And that talks about how the senses, again, are very much aware that there is some disconnect with certain human beings to have other human beings exist. And so there's that story, and how I met the woman who wrote what she had to say about the very thing I found from her and then run into her years later, and we're talking about, it's so much to read, to try and express right now. I hope I'm not babbling too much. Another thing is looking at what animals or birds can interact with you upon.
Yeah.
I have lots of experiences with birds. There's a piece called Synchronicity and the Bird, and it talks about me reading a poem called Holy Ghost to someone in a school, and the principal asking, what were you, it's amazing you'd say that poem because of what happened to me today. And I said, what happened? She said, I'm driving along and, there's this bird driving along next to me for 2 whole blocks, and it lands on the hood of my car and looks at me. And so she makes a relationship between the time of year, which was the time of St. Francis of Assisi, who is born around October. And at that time, it was around October 6th. And he was from Sicily, and her name was Cecilia. And it was just all these synchronistic occurrences. And then my poem, Holy Ghost. And she said, what did it all mean? And she had been a nun before she was a principal of the school. But I had written that story up for her so she could keep it. And years later, she told me she kept it on her altar because it was, a remembrance of how things are, that something holds you together on the wing. When you look at the hieroglyphs of Egyptians, they always show a wing somewhere, representative of the spirit in some way, because we're on the wing. So it's, synchronicity is always on the wing. It's I'm always experiencing, and I have many, many more stories coming out.
Can you share a poem from Synchronicity?
Oh, sure. This one will just kind of talk to synchronicity in a way, and it's dealing with birds, and it's called Sparrow's Eye. One sunny Sunday afternoon, ascending stairs at Jack London Square, on the courtyard partially barred, I sit at its pinnacle. By bay this day of heat, my senses drink greedily. Vault of heaven, bright blue, swaddles family hues, women, men, children, babies, eyes, laugh, talk, pleasing, folk walking easy, winds blowing, breezy. I lift my head toward skies when suddenly sparrow graces my horizon, lands right in front of me, delivers another kind of peace. I feel silent, serene. When all at once its feathers flutter, my spine tingles, I shudder. Like mirrors, we look directly into one another and cock our heads to the same side. A moment of unity confides. We share and stare, then sparrow flies and flies with a piece of my light and sparrows in me. 3 days later, near my lapse in, another sparrow descends so quick, so near, without fear. It was as if sparrow demanded I stop. So I did, as it hopped from my right to my left and looked up at me. Must be a kindred spirit, I think. Amazed, I look down at this miracle on the ground and feel a heaviness release. I feel silent, a bit more free. Then sparrow flies and flies with a piece of my light and sparrows in me. Now, the next day, baby, the next day, more happens than I wish to say, but Sparrow's theme continues to play. Thursday night, open mic at Inner City's Blues Joint. We sat listening to poetry and prose, a spoken word near its close. A woman asked Inner City if she could sing. So she sang this very old song. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. Well, his eyes are on the sparrow. And I know sparrows have been watching me. You see, according to cultural anthropology, birds are sign offerings of messages to come. To the shaman priest, the sparrow means desire, fertility of grace, and the power of song. So that's, yeah, that's, the milder version of what synchronicity is. And then there's other pieces.
Can we see the book?
Yeah. Let's see a copy of the book.
Ah, it's a beautiful book.
Yep.
And that's available at nomadicpress.com?
Yes, nomadicpress.com. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and then there's, I've had people say, oh, this is too hard or this is too soft. There's everything, hard, soft, in between, mystical, magical, in your dream, whatever.
Well, for the hard, soft, and everything between, for the mystical and magical in your dream, you're definitely gonna want to get a copy of Synchronicity. So we're gonna drop the links below. Thank you, Tureeda, so much for your time. And it's been a really, really beautiful. It's been a beautiful time, the conversation we've got to have together, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. And so enjoy your work. Looking to hear you read again. And thank you for having me interviewing. Yeah.
We'll talk soon.